Throughout human history, empires have risen and fallen. Civilizations have bloomed and vanished. And through it all, a strange and often troubling practice has quietly left its mark: inbreeding. From the royal palaces of Europe to the grand tombs of ancient Egypt, the powerful have often married close relatives, believing it would strengthen their rule and preserve their bloodlines. Yet history shows that this practice came with heavy costs. Take Charles II of Spain, for instance. He was born into the Habsburg dynasty, a family famous for generations of intermarriage. The result? Charles suffered from a long list of health problems, struggled with physical weakness, and was unable to have children. His personal struggles weren't just private tragedies. They directly caused the end of his dynasty in the late 17th century. Similarly, in ancient Egypt, Tutankhamun, the young boy king, was the product of a brother-sister marriage. His body showed the consequences: twisted limbs, fragile bones, and chronic health issues that plagued him from childhood until his early death. You might wonder, why would these leaders take such risks? The reasons were complex. Royals wanted to keep pure bloodlines, retain wealth, secure political alliances, and make sure their power stayed in the family. These choices made sense at the time, even if today we know the biological dangers. Charles Darwin once noted that in both humans and animals, those who adapt, cooperate, and mix their genes tend to survive. Inbreeding, while it could consolidate power in the short term, was essentially betting against nature itself. This pattern of keeping power within families wasn't limited to Egypt or Spain. Across Europe, the Habsburgs famously practiced intermarriage. For centuries, their distinctive Habsburg jaw became a visible sign of the problems caused by generations of close relative unions. While it may have seemed clever politically, these marriages often brought health problems, weak bodies, and genetic vulnerabilities that ultimately contributed to the family's decline. Even outside the world of kings and queens, inbreeding showed up in isolated communities. When groups were cut off from outsiders, limited in number, or restricted by strict cultural norms, marriages among relatives were sometimes necessary. On remote islands like Tristan da Cunha, for example, families married within their small population simply because there were few other options. While practical, these unions also led to recurring illnesses and the passing down of harmful traits, reminders that nature rarely bends to human convenience. In Egypt, the pharaohs took this practice to extremes. Siblings often married to preserve the purity of the royal line and ensure the throne stayed in family hands. Akhenaten and Nefertiti's marriage, filled with political ambition and personal drama, shows how intertwined power and family loyalty could be. Their story, with all its grandeur and tragedy, reflects a society where preserving bloodlines was considered a sacred duty, even if it caused suffering. Across continents and centuries, the story is the same. Inbreeding was a tool to keep wealth, status, and power concentrated, but it came at a steep price. Bodies weakened, diseases spread, and dynasties sometimes ended because of it. From the shining halls of European palaces to the sun-baked tombs of Egypt and the quiet villages of isolated islands, the practice left a trail of sorrow, warning, and fascination. The history of inbreeding is more than just a footnote. It is a cautionary tale about ambition, human nature, and the limits of control. Those who tried to manipulate life to serve power often paid dearly, showing that nature and genetics cannot be ignored. This is the story of families, kingdoms, and the hidden costs of keeping bloodlines pure. A shadow that echoes across time, reminding us of the consequences when ambition overrides wisdom. The pharaohs and their bloodlines step into ancient Egypt, and the world feels alive with the roar of the Nile, the shine of golden temples, and the weight of traditions that shaped every pharaoh's life. Among these traditions was a practice both fascinating and dangerous: marrying within the family. From the time Egypt became a unified kingdom around 3100 BC under Pharaoh Narmer, Keeping the royal bloodline pure was a priority. By the Ptolemaic dynasty, from 305 BC to 30 BC, sibling marriages were common, seen as both a religious duty and a way to hold on to power. Ptolemy II Philadelphus, for example, married his full sister, Arsinoe II. Outsiders whispered in awe and shock, but the pharaohs believed it was their divine right, comparing themselves to the gods Isis and Osiris. Cleopatra VII, the last Ptolemaic ruler, carried this tradition forward. Smart, cunning, and full of charisma, she married two of her younger brothers, securing her throne and the family fortune. But these unions weren't just political chess moves, they shaped lives. Imagine a palace buzzing with advisors, golden artifacts gleaming in the sunlight, and Cleopatra at the center, balancing love, loyalty, and survival with every decision. Yet the human cost was enormous. Tutankhamun, the boy king who took the throne at 9, offers a heartbreaking glimpse. His tiny frame, bent feet, and fragile bones show how generations of inbreeding can weaken even the most powerful. Malaria ran through his veins, and his life was a constant struggle against illnesses that modern science now links to his family's genetic history. Even for common people, marrying relatives was often a necessity. Small villages, limited choices, and isolated communities meant cousins or close kin became partners, carrying these hidden risks quietly through everyday life. The Habsburg Labyrinth Europe tells a similar story of ambition and caution ignored. The House of Habsburg, stretching across Austria, Spain, and Hungary, was built on one idea: keep power inside the family. Charles II of Spain embodies both the glory and the tragedy of this approach. Born in 1661 to Philip IV and Mariana of Austria, uncle and niece, he inherited generations of tightly woven family bloodlines. As king, he was weak, often sick, and burdened by the notorious Habsburg jaw, a protruding lower jaw and lip that marked him unmistakably. People whispered that he was El Hechizado, the bewitched, a living testament to the dangers of inbreeding. Imagine Charles in his palace, the walls lined with portraits of ancestors, each showing the same strong jaw, each carrying its silent warning. His body fragile, mind occasionally clouded, he struggled to carry the weight of a dynasty. Yet ambition and tradition left little room for change. The family clung to power, even as nature worked against them. From Egypt's golden tombs to Europe's grand palaces, history is full of stories where desire for control, loyalty to family, and belief in tradition collided with human biology. The pharaohs and kings remind us that power can be seductive, but it comes with costs that echo across generations. In every corner of the world, these tales mix fascination, tragedy, and a cautionary lesson. No matter how much we try to bend the rules, life has its limits and nature rarely forgives. Charles II of Spain's life is a powerful lesson about the hidden dangers of inbreeding. Born into the Habsburg dynasty, he inherited generations of tightly interwoven family bloodlines. The most obvious sign of this was the infamous Habsburg jaw, a pronounced lower jaw and protruding lip, but the problems went far deeper. Behind the splendor of palaces and grand halls, the family faced recurring tragedies: stillbirths, infant deaths, and a serious shortage of healthy heirs. Greatest consequence was Charles himself. Despite marrying twice, his fragile health and numerous physical problems, brought on by generations of family intermarriage, made it impossible for him to have children. When he died in 1700, the Spanish Habsburg line ended, triggering the War of Spanish Succession as European powers scrambled to claim the vacant throne. His life and reign remain a poignant reminder of how ambition and tradition can collide with nature in unforgiving ways. The story of royal inbreeding didn't stop with Spain. In Britain, close family marriages were also used to secure power and preserve alliances, though less extreme than in Spain or Egypt. King Edward III who ruled from 1327 to 1377, married his second cousin Philippa of Hainault. Their union strengthened political ties, but it also created a web of interconnected bloodlines that influenced British history for generations. This chain of family connections became especially notable during the reign of Queen Victoria. Known as the grandmother of Europe, Victoria ruled from 1837 to 1901. She married her first cousin, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, and together they had 9 children. Her descendants intermarried with other European royal families, spreading influence and sometimes genetic consequences across the continent. The human cost of these unions became painfully clear. Queen Victoria's family introduced hemophilia, a serious blood clotting disorder, into the royal lineage. Her son Leopold, Duke of Albany, lived with the condition, facing a life of frequent illness and vulnerability. Through Victoria's daughters, the disease traveled into other royal families in Europe, earning the nickname the Royal Disease. This is a striking example of how a single genetic issue could ripple through generations, quietly shaping the lives of kings, queens, and their heirs. By the 20th century, the British monarchy began to move away from marrying close relatives. Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, and Queen Elizabeth II were both great-grandchildren of Victoria, making them distant cousins. But since their marriage, the family largely avoided unions between close relatives, reflecting new knowledge about genetics and changing social norms. The story of inbreeding is really a story about heredity itself, the invisible threads that connect us across generations. Genetics is like a tapestry. Each thread contributes to the overall pattern, but when threads are twisted too tightly, the fabric becomes fragile. Families throughout history, from the pharaohs of Egypt to European monarchies, often married relatives to hold on to power, wealth, and status. While these unions could secure thrones and alliances, they often brought hidden costs, physical deformities, illnesses, and shorter lifespans. Modern genetics, a relatively new field, has helped us understand these risks, revealing just how deeply these choices shape human health and history. Across time and continents, the stories of Charles II, Queen Victoria, and countless other royals show us a delicate balance between ambition, family loyalty, and nature's laws. They remind us that while power can be inherited, health and vitality cannot always be controlled. In the end, the tangled threads of family bloodlines leave both fascinating tales and cautionary lessons, echoing across centuries for us to learn from. Gregor Mendel, known as the father of modern genetics, started uncovering the secrets of heredity in the mid-1800s. He experimented with pea plants and noticed clear patterns in how traits were passed down from one generation to the next. His discoveries, now called Mendel's laws, helped explain why inbreeding, when close relatives have children, can cause problems. Inbreeding reduces genetic variety, which increases the chance that harmful traits or inherited diseases show up. Many of these problems hide in families for generations, but become obvious when relatives reproduce. By the early 20th century, scientists like British statistician and geneticist Sir Ronald Aylmer Fisher developed ways to measure inbreeding. He created the coefficient of inbreeding, which calculates the probability that a child inherits identical copies of a gene from both parents. This tool helped people understand the real risks of closely related marriages. Even today, some isolated communities still face these issues. For instance, on the island of Pingelep in Micronesia, many residents suffer from a rare genetic disorder called total colorblindness, caused by the island's small gene pool and isolation from the outside world. The rise of genetic counseling brought hope. In the 1940s, pioneers like Sheldon Reed coined the term and started helping families understand genetics and make safer choices about having children. This knowledge has allowed people to reduce the risks of passing on harmful traits. In the animal kingdom, Inbreeding has a more complicated story. While humans generally avoid it, many species in nature rely on it as part of survival. Charles Darwin, studying plants and animals in the 1800s, observed that close mating often leads to weaker health and lower fertility. Endangered species show this clearly. Take the Florida panther, for example. In the 1900s, only a few dozen panthers remained in the wild. With such a small population, inbreeding caused heart defects, kinked tails, and other genetic problems that threatened the species' survival. In 1995, wildlife biologists took bold action. They introduced 8 female Texas cougars to the panther population. This genetic rescue added fresh DNA, and the panthers began to recover, showing how carefully planned interventions can save a species. Other species showed different strategies. On the remote Galapagos Islands, Galapagos, hawks have been isolated for generations. Studies by ornithologist Patricia Parker showed that these birds have inbred for so long that they seem to naturally avoid serious genetic problems, a testament to the adaptability of nature. Even tiny insects display clever ways to manage inbreeding. Through these examples, it's clear that genetics is a delicate and fascinating puzzle. Inbreeding can bring real risks, but life often finds ways to balance itself. Whether in humans, wild animals, or insects, the story of genes is full of surprises, showing both the dangers of close mating and the resilience of life to adapt and survive. In the insect world, some species like ants, bees, and wasps follow a fascinating and unusual method of reproduction known as haplodiploidy. In this system, male insects develop from eggs that were never fertilized, which means they inherit only one set of chromosomes from their mother. Females, on the other hand, come from fertilized eggs and carry 2 sets of chromosomes. This creates a remarkable situation where sisters are extremely closely related, almost like clones, which helps explain why these colonies are so cooperative and organized. Each member seems to instinctively work for the benefit of the whole group. From foraging for food to defending the nest, the genetic closeness acts like a silent thread that holds the colony together, shaping behaviors and creating a sense of unity that's rare in the natural world. Humans, while much more complex, can face somewhat similar challenges in isolated communities. In places cut off from the rest of the world, populations can remain small and interrelated over generations, leading to a concentration of certain genetic traits. Tristan da Cunha, a tiny island in the South Atlantic, is one of the most striking examples. First spotted by Portuguese explorers in the early 1500s, it didn't have permanent settlers until the British Navy established a small colony in 1816 to prevent other nations from using it during the Napoleonic Wars. Over time, the island's population grew slowly but remained extremely isolated, cut off by thousands of miles of ocean. This isolation created a tight-knit society, but it also meant the genetic diversity was very limited. Today, the island has around 250 residents, many of whom share distant family connections. This concentrated gene pool has contributed to the presence of inherited conditions, including retinitis pigmentosa, a disease that gradually erodes vision. Despite these challenges, the islanders have built a vibrant, resilient community, showing how humans can adapt socially even when genetics presents difficulties. Geographical isolation isn't the only way inbreeding can occur. Cultural or social isolation can produce similar outcomes, as seen in certain religious or traditional groups. The Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, FLDS, in North America, provides a striking example. This community, which practices polygamy and often lives apart from mainstream society, has historically kept its population very close-knit. Many members are related through just a few key ancestors. Over time, this has increased the chance of rare genetic disorders such as fumarase deficiency, which can severely affect neurological development. Yet, even in the face of these challenges, the community remains tightly bonded, demonstrating a complex interplay of culture, genetics, and social structure that affects both health and daily life. The good news is that in our modern era, science gives us tools to understand and reduce the risks linked to inbreeding. The early 21st century marked the start of the genomic era, which revolutionized the way we see our DNA. The completion of the Human Genome Project in 2003 was a milestone, providing scientists with a detailed map of every gene in the human body. This allows doctors and researchers to spot mutations or genetic changes that could cause diseases, opening the door to preventative measures and personalized treatments. Today, genetic testing can show individuals their likelihood of passing on certain conditions, while genetic counseling helps families make informed choices about reproduction. Together, these tools act as a modern safeguard, giving people the knowledge to protect future generations while still celebrating the wonder and diversity of life. From tiny insects in the wild to remote human communities, the dance of genes shapes lives in both subtle and dramatic ways. It reminds us that, whether it's in a buzzing bee colony or a family living on a distant island, genetics influences health, relationships, and survival. At the same time, science provides hope, allowing humans to understand these natural patterns and make choices that balance tradition, culture, and well-being for generations to come. Modern genetic testing can spot people who carry hidden genes that might cause serious health problems if both parents pass them on. A striking example is the Dor Yesharim program, started in the early 1980s by Rabbi Joseph Eckstein in Brooklyn, New York, after losing 4 children to Tay-Sachs disease, a rare and deadly condition common among Ashkenazi Jews. Eckstein wanted to prevent other families from experiencing the same heartbreak. The program offered confidential genetic screening and helped match couples to avoid passing on dangerous genes. Thanks to this initiative, the number of Tay-Sachs cases dropped dramatically, showing how powerful genetic testing can be in reducing the risks of inbreeding. But testing is just one part of the story. Genetic counseling also plays a vital role. Think of genetic counselors as guides helping families navigate the tricky waters of inherited disorders. They can explain the risks of having a child with certain conditions and suggest ways to manage or reduce those risks. One of the pioneers in this field, Sheldon Reed, first used the term genetic counseling in the 1940s. Working at the Dite Institute for Human Genetics in Minneapolis, he believed counseling should empower people to make smart, informed choices about their family's genetic health, a principle that still drives the field today. Together, genetic testing and counseling act as a protective shield, helping families understand and manage the complex dance of inheritance. Laws also shape how inbreeding affects societies. Around the world, rules about marriage between close relatives vary widely, reflecting a mix of health concerns, ethics, and cultural values. In the United States, each state has its own approach. For example, Rhode Island and New Jersey allow first cousins to marry, while Texas and Arizona strictly forbid it. These differences highlight the ongoing tension between individual freedom and public health. South Korea once had an unusual law called the same surname and same origin rule, which prevented people with the same family name and ancestral home from marrying. Initially intended to stop inbreeding, the law was eventually repealed in 1997 after much debate about its limitations. Historical cases also show how genetics and the law intersect. In 1935 England, Helen Spurway and her sister Naomi Mitchison, both carrying a gene for night blindness, wondered if they could marry the same man, assuming he didn't carry the gene to prevent passing the condition to their children. While they never went through with it, their situation sparked widespread discussion about genetics, inheritance, and legal boundaries. Cases like theirs remind us that understanding Genes isn't just a scientific challenge, it also shapes culture, law, and how we make choices about family and health. Crossing over to South America, we land in Brazil, where a creative approach was taken to tackle inbreeding in the remote town of Canudos. In this community, marriages between relatives were common, which sometimes caused health problems in children. Instead of imposing strict laws, officials launched a program called Programa Saúde de Família, or Family Health Program. The focus was on education, teaching families about the risks of passing on certain genes. By 2005, this effort had led to a noticeable drop in these close relative marriages, proving that knowledge can sometimes achieve more than rules. When we look closer at human genetics, patterns start to appear, showing how our history shapes health today. In communities where relatives often marry, some genetic disorders appear more frequently. Take cystic fibrosis, for example, a serious condition that affects the lungs and digestion. First described in 1938 by Dr. Dorothy Anderson, its origins date back thousands of years to the Fertile Crescent. Interestingly, carrying the cystic fibrosis gene may have helped people survive cholera outbreaks by keeping essential fluids in their bodies. In modern times, however, the disease can be life-threatening without proper treatment. In the Middle East, thalassemia tells a similar story. This blood disorder, which causes abnormal hemoglobin, once helped people survive malaria, just like sickle cell anemia did in Africa. But without malaria, thalassemia can become a heavy burden. Ancient texts, including writings by Hippocrates, even mention symptoms that sound like thalassemia, showing how long this gene has existed in human populations. Isolated islands have their own stories of rare genetic conditions. On Pinglip, in the Pacific, for example, a large number of people are born with complete color blindness, called achromatopsia. This goes back to a devastating typhoon in 1775, which left only 20 survivors, one of whom carried the gene for this condition. As the island's population grew from those survivors, the gene spread, making the disorder common in that small community. While these conditions bring real challenges, modern science offers hope. Gene therapy, which can add, remove, or change DNA, has started to treat inherited diseases. In 2017, the FDA approved the first gene therapy for a type of inherited blindness. Pioneers like Dr. James Wilson and Dr. Zhang Bennett are paving the way for treatments for other genetic disorders, and therapies for cystic fibrosis and thalassemia are already in clinical trials. There are also prevention strategies like pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, where embryos created through IVF are tested for diseases before being implanted, giving families a chance to avoid passing on certain conditions. It's not just humans who face the challenges of inbreeding. Zoos and conservation programs also carefully manage breeding to keep animals healthy and genetically diverse. This delicate balancing act ensures that endangered species survive without passing on harmful traits. A landmark effort began in 1981, when the American Association of Zoos and Aquariums started the Species Survival Plan, aiming to protect animals like lowland gorillas whose populations were rapidly shrinking. Through careful planning and monitoring, these programs show how science can help both humans and animals navigate the complicated world of genetics and inheritance. Under the Species Survival Plan, SSP, a careful breeding program was set up to pair animals based on their genetics, making sure the population stayed healthy and diverse. This combination of science and careful monitoring has since been used for many other species, showing just how important these programs are for protecting wildlife. But running these programs is far from easy. Take the Florida panther as an example. By the mid-1990s, only 20 to 30 panthers were left, and signs of inbreeding were everywhere. Heart problems, twisted tails, and low fertility made their future look bleak. In a bold move, conservationists brought 8 female pumas from Texas in 1995, giving the population a much-needed boost and showing how introducing new genes can save a species. Similar efforts can be seen on the Galapagos Islands, where the Giant Tortoise Restoration Project had to tackle inbreeding head-on. Scientists created a genetic matchmaking program to mix lineages and keep the species strong for the future. But as conservationist Gerald Durrell often reminded us, protecting the species is a long game. It's not just about preventing inbreeding, it's also about making sure animals can survive in their natural homes. The California condor demonstrates this perfectly. Even though captive breeding programs increased their numbers, reintroducing them into the wild brought new problems like habitat destruction and lead poisoning. In fiction and media, inbreeding has been explored in ways that capture both fascination and caution. George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones, introduced in 1996 and later adapted for HBO in 2011, presents the Lannisters as an example of aristocratic inbreeding. Twins Cersei and Jaime maintain a secret relationship from a young age, and their children eventually inherit the throne, continuing the family line. Martin uses their story to show how inbreeding can stem from twisted ideas of love, loyalty, and family duty, weaving together power, lineage, and obsession with pure blood. Moving from fantasy to history, the Netflix series The Crown, which premiered in 2016, offers a more realistic look at royal families. By examining intermarriage in Europe's royal houses, it subtly shows the challenges of keeping bloodlines. Blue, while portraying the complex relationships and personal struggles of the monarchy. Another striking example is the 1999 Spanish film The Nameless, which follows a secret society practicing inbreeding to create a pure bloodline. This story emphasizes the dark and dangerous side of trying to control inheritance through genetics. The story follows a brother and sister who were separated for many years and accidentally meet again without realizing who the other is. The series doesn't avoid showing how complicated and emotional their relationship can be, inviting viewers to think about family ties and the rules society sets for us. Looking back at this journey through the twists of family relationships and genetic connections, we see how nature and nurture work together, shaping the lives of generations. As the famous British geneticist J.B.S. Haldane once said, "Universe is not only stranger than we imagine, it's stranger than we can imagine." From the quiet isolation of Pinglip Island to the lively lands of the Middle East, our genetic history often surprises us in ways that are both fascinating and powerful. Now, with the rapid growth of genetic science, we have tools that can help us not just understand the past, but also influence the future, helping life continue with more health and happiness for everyone. Every strand of DNA has a story, and each story is part of who we are. Let's appreciate the mystery, the beauty, and the lessons hidden in our genes. As Charles Darwin wisely said, the origin of everything is a puzzle beyond our full understanding, and sometimes we just have to accept the unknown. Our adventure of discovery is far from over.